Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Draft Talk podcast, brought to you by your friends and mine at 99 Yards. The Draft Talk podcast, as it says in the title, is exclusively about the NFL draft, where you bring to you our scouting reports, mock draft interviews, our famous top fives, but more importantly than that, a team of all-round good guys. Unfortunately, our regular host, Brian, is off doing something more important this evening, although I'm not quite sure what could be more important than being here talking football with us. So he's stuck with me in the guest host chair this week. I'm joined by my good friends and all-round, I'm going to call them superstars this week, Owen and MJ. Guys, how you doing?
I like that, Stu. Superstars, we'll go with that. Yeah, doing really well. And after that, our preview last week of the Senior Bowl, I'm looking forward to having a chat with you guys about who we think started the week well.
Yeah, fresh from Senior Bowl practice, busy, but absolutely love it. There's the sounds of those pads clacking together, nothing like Senior Bowl week.
Yeah, so Senior Bowl week, guys, it comes around quick, doesn't it? Senior Bowl will always have a special place in my heart, really, as it was a few years ago myself and Owen covered it for 99 Yards, and through Owen's genius thinking, Draft Talk was born, but we're going to cut out the sentimentality. Let's get down to it. Guys, what's your thoughts and who's been impressing you?
Where to start? It's been a very productive few days worth of practice, I would say. We'll maybe come on to some more positions, but I would say that overall it's quite equal between the two teams. There are definitely stronger groups out there. The national team, I would say, is much better on the defensive line than the American team, but the American team may have the stronger offensive lines. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out during the game, but it is quite equal and it's set up really nicely for the game. But there's some really impressive prospects out there, which I'm sure we're going to get into.
I think a couple of days in, so I've been really, really impressed with the standard of play and practice. And I think going back to, again, what we said last week about players using this as a chance to really propel their draft stock. I think a lot of guys have seized this opportunity, the ones who've come down to Mobile this week. I think in some ways it might have made our job a little bit more difficult because we've said this is a wide open draft. And I think there've been lots of good performances. And I don't think at the end of this week I'm going to necessarily be any clearer on who I think, might be coming in, trying to get into that end of round one, kind of top of two. We've said that I think outside the top 10 picks, somebody might go 20, somebody might go 60, and there's not an awful lot between them. But I think it's been a couple of days of really good practice.
I think for me, the Senior Bowl has been a kind of microcosm of the draft as a whole, in that there's not been someone I would say has been the standout brilliant player, but there's a lot of damn good players. And I think we've maybe been a little bit harsh on this draft, I think, thinking about it. And I've been thinking about that over the last wee while, that yes, we maybe don't have that blue chip players, but come 5 years down the line, I think we're going to say the 2023 draft, there's been a lot of good, solid NFL starters have come out of that draft. There might not be the boom prospects, but there might not be as many busts either as we think.
Yeah, totally. It's just that top end, isn't it? We're maybe being harsh on the first round talent, which means that you're going to see some second round talent have to go in the first. It's just going to have to happen. But there's probably more day two talent than there is day two picks. So some of them are going to end up falling back. Some of them are going to end up pushed up. But you're maybe going to have what I would, off the top of my head, maybe about 100 prospects who feasibly could stake a claim of having a day two label.
And I guess when we get to it, this will play into how teams move around that draft board. And, if teams want to collect some more day two picks because they think, well, there's still plenty, as you say, there's still plenty of talent there, right the way down to 100. I could be picking up some great players on day two, might get myself a little bit of draft stock for next year into the bargain. Yeah. It will be interesting. It's always interesting to see how the quality and quantity of players kind of affects how teams move themselves around that board.
Yeah, there's lots of projects. So if you're happy to take on, that's why they're not seen as first round talents. That if you're happy to take them on, and if you want multiple shots at it, then this is a good year for that. And plenty of them at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah. So come on then, guys, give us some names. Who do you want to start talking about, and we'll see where this might venture, because we could be on a long and winding road tonight.
Where to start? So I think I would like to start with offensive linemen if we can, because those, and then we'll maybe touch on some defensive linemen, because they're the drills there everyone likes, right? You're putting out clips on Twitter. They're the ones that get all the views. That's what everyone's there to see. That's why they do them. It gets everyone talking about the Senior Bowl. And I think there's a bunch of guys who really have done strongly across both groups and across both teams. I think we should start with Dwan Jones, though, the right tackle from Ohio State. I think we did mention him briefly on the preview just because of that massive wingspan. Was it 7'10", or the wingspan of someone who should be 7'10"? I think it was absolutely unbelievable. If he gets drafted, that will be the longest wingspan to have ever been drafted well, obviously he's going to get drafted, but it will be the longest wingspan in the modern era if the Senior Bowl measurement is true, which this will be the combine one that they go by. That's what I mean by that, sorry. But he was in practice one, absolutely blew everyone away. Everyone was talking about it. All of a sudden, this guy's going round one, and then he's got a bit of an injury, so he hasn't participated for the last 2 days. But I don't think he particularly need to. There's always these people that dropped out. I do believe he does actually have a niggling injury. It isn't just one of these injuries. I don't want to hurt my draft stock. He does have an England, but he was absolutely unbelievable. Him going up against Isaiah Foskey in the first day one of practice was absolutely fantastic. And then there's a couple of other guys on that team. The other one that has stood out to me considerably, and a guy that I haven't particularly liked so far, is Jalen Duncan from Maryland. Again, he's a left tackle, but he has been taking some reps at right tackle, which I think has been really good for him. Didn't have the best season, I would say. That really has struggled. He was one of like a draft down and say, I know Stu really liked him in the summer, that he just didn't really put all that together. Big, powerful, athletic lineman that just didn't have the season that maybe we wanted. But he's really shown it at the Senior Bowl. I think he will have boosted himself dramatically because he's proven it, and it just looks easy for him. He's pushing people around, and it barely looks like he's putting in any effort, which is always good. So on that national team, they're the two offensive linemen that stood out. And then moving over to the American team with the offensive lineman, it's more probably the guy for me who stood out the most is an interior guy, center John Michael Schmitz, who has been dominant. There's plenty, dominant's going to be a word that I might use a lot during this, but he has been dominant at everything: pass protection, run blocking, and team drills. He's been absolutely everywhere. So we were talking about him as an early day 2 prospect. He's probably solidified himself in that discussion. Osiris Torrance from Florida is a guy who's getting first round grades. He struggled on day 1 for me. He was getting pushed around a bit, and I think you always have to take the one-on-one drills in a bit of context. He is going to have a man either side of him when you're actually in game scenario, so you can't have everything on that. But he was getting pushed around. I thought he'd be a little bit more powerful than he was, but he has really come strong over these last couple of days, where kind of maybe found his feet and worked some players out, and he's put it together, which is better. But the 2 tackles I'll just touch on is Matthew Bergeron, who we've spoken about loads. I'm not going to go in on him, but we said in the preview he will be solid, but I don't expect him to flash. I would say that's exactly what he's been. I can't say I've seen him being beaten once. He's not going to give you the flashy play. He's not going to be pancaking people around everywhere, but he's just going to win his reps. That's exactly what he's done. And Darnell Wright is a player that I think has done a phenomenal job. 6'5", 342 pounds. He's a massive guy, probably an exclusive right tackle, but he's nasty. Get him in the run game. That's what he wants. He wants to get his hands on you. Not very good at countering, but if he can get the first punch on you, then you're going nowhere. So there are some players that are all those players are going to be in day 2 discussion, and some of them maybe say like Dwan Jones and Darnell Wright could push himself into first round.
The one I wanted to touch on just before I pass over to MJ and let him speak was Dwan Jones. Obviously, the question mark that I had about Dwan Jones, which on day 1 he actually really surprised me. Why was his footwork? He's much lighter on his feet than maybe I'd seen before, and sometimes you've seen him, you wondered about speed around the outside, but I think he coped really well with that.
Yeah.
I think that he was able to move himself around really well. And John Michael Smits is a guy that I've loved since the summertime. And I think he's just shown himself to be an offensive leader early. He's always around the other guys. He's always chatting. He's always working hard, and he just seems to be a proper pro.
Yeah, absolutely. So where to start? I think all the names that you've mentioned are ones that I was just ticking them off as we were going down here. John Michael Schmitz. The thing about John Michael Schmitz, the couple of clips that I saw, he looks like a guy who's always looking for work. So he will take out the first guy, onto the next one. There was a screen pass, I think, where he was out in front, and he was flattening guys, and I think he will become a best friend of whoever it is that's running in behind him. Dawan Jones, yes, obviously he was like the highlight. He was almost like the first headline on day one. It was like, wow, look at wingspan. Obviously, as you mentioned, he's injured. I'm just trying to keep up with what's going on today. I think one of the things is that means he's had a bit more time to meet with some teams, and apparently he's met with the Bucks. That's obviously a chance for him to talk to them, and the other part of this is obviously the character part. Talking to teams, teams getting a feel for what a guy is like. You mentioned Darnell Wright. I really like Darnell Wright. One of the things I like about him is because he's from Tennessee. He's quite battle tested against a lot of quality edge rushers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that he's obviously done himself a few favors there this week. I liked Osiris Torrance's power once he got started. I think he will remain in the chat for that kind of end of round one. Matthew Bergeron, solid, dependable. The two words I've got written down here: solid, dependable, does his job. And then the last one I was just going to mention, just because I've seen a clip today, was Oluwatimi from Michigan, the center, because he just flattened Keanu Benton a couple of times. So I think that's a name that I hadn't done a lot of work on. Might go back over and check out that center from Michigan as well.
Yeah, he'd started playing a lot of. I noticed just in day one, and he was playing a lot at guard, and they weren't really rotating the centers as much. They had Jake Andrews, who we did an interview with, taking most of the reps at center, but he seemed to be there all the time taking reps at center. And they were rotating in Cody Mock to play some center. And he wasn't really in that rotation, so it was maybe NFL teams wanted to see him at guard, and he was holding up all right. But yeah, he has been taking some more reps at center. But he's maybe one of those guys who could play either spot, but is a center.
I think you just mentioned Cody Mock. That was one of the other things I was going to mention. Was we said last week, these guys who take reps at other positions. So by the sounds of it, he's been taking reps at virtually every position, at tackle, guard, center, which again is a high character thing. Teams will like that. They'll get a better feel for the player, and it only goes to his advantage.
Just one other guy I just wanted to touch on. He's maybe an unheralded guy. Probably won't have escaped Bill Belichick because he's come from the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. McClendon Curtis, I think he's been a solid player. He's someone who could do a role. He's not going to be troubling the top end of the draft. You're probably not going to hear much about him until day 3, probably. But I think he's held up really well. He's looked quite solid. Could the Patriots pick another guy from that offensive line? I don't think they're going to, but we didn't think Cole Strange was going as high as he did last year.
There's a lot of these smaller school guys have shown up, even on day one, which notoriously is a find your feet day, that they seem to slot straight in. You wouldn't have known, if it wasn't for the helmets they were wearing, you would not have known that they were from smaller schools or played against lesser opposition. They've all looked at home, which is really good to see, and to say that's what the Senior Bowl's there for, to give these guys the opportunity. But a lot of them have done really well, especially some of the receivers as well.
Yeah, so we're obviously thinking that the O-line guys have done pretty well. Who else has stood out for you? MJ, give us some names.
Okay, do we want to stay in the trenches then and go who's been going up against the O-line? I have to say that overall, I think I've just had the edge to the O-line over the edge rushers. I haven't been hugely impressed with what I've seen from the edge rushers, but a few names just to throw out there. I mentioned him just a second ago, and with Oluwatimi, but Keanu Benton has been able to show his power and his athleticism, and I think his name will start to creep up some boards there.
Can I just say about it? I featured him in an article which was underrated guys, and 3 hours after posting it, Daniel Jeremiah decides to put him as the 8th best prospect in this class currently. No, he's meant to be underrated, Daniel Jeremiah, not the 8th best player in this class.
Are you not getting him confused with Keon White?
Oh, right, sorry. Well, yes, I was, but he's on the list, you see.
Yeah.
I just think. I think we have to watch out here. I think Daniel Jeremiah might be reading some of our stuff. I think that's what might be happening here, you know. But you've mentioned Keon White, so we'll talk about him for a little bit as well. So with him, it was the power that I think I've been impressed by, that kind of, that bull rush that he's got. Carl Brooks from Bowling Green, I think he's had a good start to the week, and again, kind of a power rusher. And then in terms of speed, Will McDonald, the speed of his rush, I think, has been very impressive. And then one of the guys who I put on my top 5 list, Isaiah Foskey, I think for me, he's been as advertised, in that if he can do it with speed, then he gets there, and he's got some good moves at speed. But if he does get stopped on that initial rush, I think he doesn't quite have the power to then overcome that offensive lineman. But he's had a decent week so far. I think I want to see a bit more from the edge rushers. I think going into the game, I think that might be a chance. If I was one of those guys, I'd want to try and do something in that game at the weekend. Because, as I said at the start, I think I'm just giving the edge to the O-line in the drills so far.
Yeah, I would be as well. I guess I'll just touch on a couple of names there. I was getting mixed up there, but yeah, Keon White is a kind of a tweener. Say I had him I had them both on underrated guys, but Keon White, it seems to have got a lot of love over the last couple of weeks. Come from someone that I hadn't watched until a week ago. I did a top 50 board. I hadn't watched him, so he doesn't feature on my top 50 board. But after watching him, he's a freaks list guy. I say he's a tweener. He could play through the middle probably as a 3-tech, but he could play as an edge rusher. But he can also drop into coverage as well. Just timed, but going over 21 miles an hour in coverage as an edge rusher is pretty impressive. And the guy I was getting mistaken for, Keanu Benton, I think is probably been the best defensive lineman currently that we've seen. We'll see what happens in the game, but his scouting report looked as a really beefy run stopper who was extremely powerful, extremely strong, but needed a little bit more athleticism. Was probably just a rotational guy that you'll just have on running downs, but he's shown that he can be a lot more than that. That he's bringing out some athleticism. He's got some pop, some explosiveness to his game, and some pass rushing skills as well, which has been really good to see. So I think he's been probably the best offensive lineman. Probably looking one of those guys that we're now going to label as a day 2 guy. Nick Hampton has been someone that stood out to me a little bit from App State. He's been caught out at times, but has looked good coming off the edge. He's going to be one of those. Is he a linebacker? Is he an edge? Do a little bit of everything, but he's looked good on that national team. And Will McDonald, I can't quite figure out whether I like him or not. He's one of those players that he's good, but he's on the light side. 241 pounds. He's pretty lanky. It looks wrong, but it obviously is. He is productive. But he wins purely with speed rather than he's got really no power to his game at the moment. So if your team drafts Will McDonald, I'd say he's probably a designated pass rusher for now until he can start. He's going to have to put on 10 pounds, I would say, just to try and be effective in the run game. But the defensive line, I agree with MJ there that there has been some good, but not a lot of great. And say on day 1, that looked like Isaiah Foskey was going to be that guy. hasn't translated over to day 2 or 3. He hasn't really, you get the highlight reels that he's not really going to feature on any of the clips that we post out, that it's almost like he's been figured out a little bit. And I think that's kind of what Isaiah Foskey is for me, that if you want a guy that you want him to come in straight away, be successful, get you some sacks, I think that's what he'll do. But I don't think he's going to offer much more of a ceiling than I kind of think what he is now is what he will be. If you want someone to come in, you desperate need for someone on the edge. I think he's probably the best one to go for because his floor is so high. But I just don't think he'll offer the upside as someone like a Keon White who was really just starting out, was recruited as a tight end, has played tight end. He played tight end before he transferred to Georgia Tech. I think it was for Old Dominion. He was playing tight end, then transferred to play defensive line at Georgia Tech, and has been unbelievable.
I think just picking up on Foskey and Will McDonald, and going back to who's gonna draft them and where do they fit. If you're a team and you're looking for additional depth in those passing downs, the situational pass rusher, that's how I see both of those at the moment. Not on the field all the time or for the majority of the snaps, but third and long passing down. You want to try and get to the quarterback. That's where I see them coming in at the moment.
I'm glad you guys are talking about Will McDonald, because back in July I posted players to watch for the coming season and be interested for the draft, and the other 4 have sucked and they're nowhere near it. So I'm glad Will McDonald's making you there, because at least I got one right. It doesn't happen very often. We've obviously talked about the sexy positions in the trenches now, so let's move to the less sexy positions, the guys maybe in the skill positions and defensive backs. Where are you thinking, guys? Who have you liked? What's been going on there?
Considering where I thought this group was, it has impressed me more than I expected them to. And before the week, just looking down the depth chart, it was kind of there's no one there on the national team at wide receiver that piques my interest at all. There's a couple on the Americans, but it's actually reversed that. I think the national team wide receivers have been much better in a way, and I think that might be partly down to the corner talent being superior on the American team. It's kind of on the national team, the wide receivers have had their way. On the American team, it's the corners and the defensive backs that have had their way. But a real winner from this week is Jaden Reed from Michigan State. He's been catching everything. He's been all over the place. Has been a lot quicker, and he's loads quicker than he looks. It doesn't look quick, but it is. He's got really long strides, kind of lanky frame. That he's been really, really good. Couple of names that I hadn't seen or I didn't really even know of that really impressed me. Michael Wilson from Stanford. He was really good over the first couple of days. Hasn't been so good in practice on Thursday, the last one, but he set himself up to have a really good. I'd say he's boosted his draft stocks. I'm not sure many people would have heard of him, never mind watched him. And one that definitely people wouldn't have heard of is Grant DeBose from UNC Charlotte, who was one of those smaller school guys that really has looked better than some of these receivers on that team. And the last one, Trey Palmer, apparently can run in the 4.2s. He has looked really good and has put on, showed that speed on the national team. But really, the big names come on the American team, which is Andre Yeshivas, who we spoke about in the preview. That speed is real, and he looks the real deal coming from Princeton. Nathaniel Tank Dell, who I think we might be talking a lot more about. He's just unguardable. The defensive backs have got fears going up against him. He's so nippy and he can catch everything. But he is 5'8" and he is only 163 pounds. And there needs to be a discussion of how high you can draft that. Because I would not be touched him with a barge pole in day 2, which is where his talent lies, because he is that good. But he's a complete outlier at that size, isn't it?
I think my thoughts I kind of wrote down about him was that, yes, there's that size concern, but how much is a size concern when the guy's standing 10 yards from anybody else because he separates that bloody far away?
Yeah,
and he's so quick. Yes, it is going to put a lot of teams off, but his separation has been unreal. They just can't get near him. And it's not just, I think, because of his speed.
Yeah.
I think it's his route running ability as well. The cornerbacks are bamboozled by his speed, but they're bamboozled by where he's going. Not even sure he knows where he's going some of the time, but it's damn effective.
I think that just on Tank, absolutely. And the thing for him will be he's got to be drafted somewhere where whoever is the offensive coordinator, they can scheme him open.
Yeah.
And that could work. I think there is a fear around his size, because I looked this up last night, and that is the equivalent of me playing. In fact, I'm a little bit taller. So, but weight-wise, not far off. And I know that if I got hit in an American football game, that was me done for like 3 months. So there are some size concerns there, but then I'm wary, and you learn as you're going through this process every year. I had concerns over Devonta Smith and his height weight kind of combination, and thought he might have been a bit fragile. He's what, 1,000 yards every year, isn't he? So I think players can work with that kind of height weight combination, but it will be something you're going to have to be aware of when you're giving him his route tree.
Yeah.
The other one I was just going to mention on Yoshivas. So this is a little shout out to whoever Mihai Yoshivas is, because whenever I tweet anything about Andre Yoshivas, Mihai Yoshivas likes it. So I just wanted to shout out that on 99 Yards Draft Talk podcast, we are friends and family of players. We get we get followed by friends and family of players,
mums, especially mums.
so reach out to us. We're definitely here for the friends and family. But he's had a great week. But overall, the number one guy who I think has done the most is Jaden Reed, as you mentioned at the start of this. His tracking of that deep ball has been really something special. And also, again, I've seen some stuff today where he's there and he's signing autographs for young fans and stuff like that. It's all good, and he's had a great week.
And you mentioned about you were unsure about his speed, Owen. My new friends at Zebra Sports tell me that he has been the 5th fastest offensive player at the Senior Bowl.
Who's this?
Reed.
Okay.
So he has been quick. Yeah, he's been the 5th fastest offensive player measured.
It just doesn't look it. You watch it, and it just doesn't. The legs. It doesn't run like a sprinter. It's the really long strides. It just doesn't look quick, even though it is.
I tell a lie, 6th fastest, but there we go. That's pretty decent out of all the guys that they've tracked on the offensive side of the ball. So,
could I give you a couple of running backs and tight ends as well, because I think notoriously running backs a difficult position to get right at the Senior Bowl. I would say, was it Jim Nagy said this is the best group he's had at running back since he's been there. This is his 5th year. The names looked right, but it hasn't quite worked out. And Tyjae Spears on the American team has looked really decent, especially pass catching. But really, it's on the national team. Chase Brown had a really, really rough day one, but he has really come on the last couple of days. He was really quite poor in pass protection on day one, shored it up on day 2, and on day 3, he's they're doing team drills and red zone. He's there scoring a couple of touchdowns. He's getting a little nod from his twin brother, Sidney Brown, on the sidelines and tapping his head saying, well done. So it's been good to see him bounce back. He's obviously taken on some coaching as well, which is really good to see. But the guy who's really stood out to me has been Roschon Johnson, and he was only there for a day. He was only there for practice 1, and he was absolutely unbelievable. He could be someone that we're talking about 2 Texas running backs being in our top 5s, because he's that solid. It does make me think that he is more than Bijan Robinson's backup. And if he was on a different team, how much more we may actually be speaking about him. That's going to be a difficult evaluation to do, but I do think he's going to go a lot higher than we might think.
And I think if he doesn't go higher than we think, and he goes where he might go, he'll be a bargain.
Yeah.
I think he's one of these guys who, when you're looking at the kind of running back position, I'm not great running back expert, and some of you guys will be much better at that than I will, but I always look at can they do two of the three things well? Can they run between the tackles? Can they pass protect? And can they catch the ball out the backfield? He can do a bit of all three, I think.
Yeah.
I think
he can do everything.
He's good enough at everything.
Onto that, and running backs for me, I always look at vision, contact balance, receiving. Normally, if they have the contact balance, they would also be half decent in pass protection. And yeah, he does have a bit of everything to him.
I think the only other running back I was going to add on to that was Kenny McIntosh, who I think he's up there as possibly the best pass catching running back of the lot. And I think he's had a good week. And again, in terms of what you just mentioned there about which of your skills, which skill sets have you got? He's got the pass catching. I mean, I think he was over 500 yards receiving this year, and also his pass protection was looking a bit better this week so far as well. Which I think as you say, he's that kind of third down back sort of player, I think. The other one I was just going to mention while we were talking running backs, just flipping it slightly to the other side, somebody who's matched up really well in coverage against running backs is Diane Henley, linebacker from Washington State. Again, he was on my top 5 list. I was hoping for a good week, and it has been so far. He's a guy who's dotted around positions. He was a wide receiver at one point, and he's now in at linebacker. And I think his experience helps him in coverage. I think that's where he excels, and he's had a really good week, especially in those drills against the running backs.
Yeah, for me, the best linebacker has been Ivan Pace from Cincinnati. We already knew it, but he is an insane blitzer. If you want to get him rushing the passer, he's just unbelievable. He's going to take you on. He's so shifty that they're putting him on run blocking snaps with the receivers, and they're just not getting anywhere near him, and that's on every single one. He must be thriving in it, but we already knew he could do that because he's done it so much at Cincinnati. He just hadn't really been dropping into coverage. He's really impressed in the coverage drills as well this week of practice, which is something I think was a lot of questions that he needed to answer. He's answered quite a few of them because he's been sticky, he's been getting pass breakups, so he's been really good in coverage as well as that. So I think again he's a player that we're just going to say about all of it, they're just going to go higher than people think. It's just going to happen.
And another linebacker, just would kind of on the flip side, who's been really good in coverage, a converted safety, is TCU's D Winters.
Yeah.
He's a guy. He's had a pick. He's had a forced fumble. He kind of that kind of possible nickel safety linebacker hybrid kind of guy. He's had some flashes. I don't think he's been spectacular, but he's someone who could do a job in certain situations.
Yeah. Can I touch on a tight end, and that's Luke Musgrave? Stu, I'm going to get you with your Zebra Sports knowledge here. Have you got any numbers on Luke Musgrave?
I can. I've got my new friends. I've got my new friends now, so don't you worry.
As you're looking there, so Stu's just spoken to the head of Zebra Sports, who do all the analytics for the Senior Bowl and a lot of NFL teams. They measure how quickly people turn, how quickly they're running, how quickly they stop. They've got all that. So Stu's got some numbers you can show there. But I just want to say, he's 6'5", 255 pounds. He is so quick. It's unbelievable. And in the interview in the media breakfast on Wednesday, he said that he's not even back to full, as in full strength, full fitness, but he's still not running as quickly as he had been, and he's still looking to get back to that. Go on.
If you were to guess of all players, all positions, at the Senior Bowl, top speed, where's Luke Musgrave rank?
What, the one you gave us before was what? Jaden Reed. He was 6.
He was sixth on offense.
All right. Okay. Yes. All right. So
he was 6th overall on offense. I'm talking about all players, offense.
I was going to say, defense. Are we doing play your cards right here? Is it higher or lower? Is that where
go for it? Of all players, high. This is just top speed that they've achieved, not any kind of further metrics about how long. Just what's the top speed they've managed to hit. How on Luke Musgrave, including all players, defensive backs, running backs, wide receivers, everything. Where do you reckon he ranks?
I'd maybe go 5 or 6. He's that quick.
MJ, do you want to?
He's got to be top 10.
Yeah,
he's 7th.
Oh,
He's had a top speed of 20.05 miles per hour.
Wow.
He's 255 pounds.
One spot above your man, Jalen Reed. There you go.
Yeah, and what's
wedge
Jalen
between
Reed? I haven't actually got measurables on Jalen Reed.
Jaden Reed and Tank Dell. That's the two guys he's in between. So there you go.
Yeah, yeah. Tank Dell is almost 100 pounds lighter than him, and almost a foot shorter. To be fair, that's how. So this guy's athletic ability is absolutely insane, and he's quite intelligent as well. He's dropping in between. He's losing his man at corner, and he's dropping in below the safety shell. So you can see he's quite intelligent on his routes as well. So yeah, he's a player that was getting some hype beforehand, and he's fully deserving of it.
Yeah, he was on one of my watch lists, and he hasn't disappointed.
No.
MJ, any other guys you want to shed some light on?
I suppose we better touch on cornerback, hadn't we? I've got three names in particular that I wanted to kind of go over. So one was Tyreek Stevenson, because he was the guy that Daniel Jeremiah has highlighted, and so now we're all watching him. And he is particularly fast. He's physical, and he's been really sticky on his coverage first couple of days. A name I hadn't looked at particularly much before this week was Darius Rush from South Carolina. I think he's had a solid week so far in coverage. And then finally from Iowa, which might be why I've got this on today. So I think an interesting story is Riley Moss, because again, maybe we'll go back to the zebra thing here, because apparently he clocked as the fastest cornerback. He clocked about 20 miles an hour, apparently, according to the information that I've seen. And the thing here is, he's had some terrible trouble with injuries. He's had some good production in his career, but he's just got to try and stay on the field. And he's having a really good week this week. And he's one of those guys where it's just, fingers crossed he is now over the injuries. And this week will have done him a lot of good in terms of his draft stock.
Yeah, this hosting malarkey is easy. All I just have to do is shout out numbers to you guys and ask you questions. Riley Moss, third fastest DB. But your guy Rush is the first. He's the top.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Wow. Rush by name, Rush by nature.
Okay. Brian will be proud of that one, I tell you. He'll be clocking the time that comes in at. He won't forget about that one. The corner, I'm probably going to be a homer and big myself up. Kyle Blue Kelly, I think, has been very solid from Stanford. His big play will be that pick six, but I think he's been a corner who was hyped up a bit in the summer. There's a lot of guys who seem to have improved and kind of rushed past him a little bit on that standings, but I don't think he's done anything wrong over the course of the season. I think he's just maintained a steady presence, and there's going to be so many corners go early and go deep in this draft. He's not going to go round one. He might not even go round two with the amount of players there are. But if you pick up him round 3, round 4, that's a really solid player for that kind of value.
Yeah, and he keeps on improving as well. So I thought he had a pretty rough day 1. Then you put that onto day 2, where he should have maybe had 3 picks. He had one that would have been a pick 6. They were shouting him on the sidelines because there was a couple of other balls that he maybe should have come down with at the end. Darius Rush is one that I highlighted as well, that he can change direction just instantly, and he's really good at undercutting routes. So where they go in doing their cuts, and he's on it straight away. It's instantaneous. He recognizes it. He undercuts it. Again, he's someone who should have come up with a couple of balls, and he's got his hands on a couple. Hasn't quite managed to get a hold of it. But yeah, he's one that's really on the radar now. And for me, the best corner, or the one that's impressed me the most, has been Julius Brents from Kansas State. Really tall, physical guy, 6'3", just over 200 pounds. Really physical and really quick. So there's one-on-one drills, there's grabbing going on everywhere. But he seems to maintain, you can see that watching some of the coaches, they're telling them not to, put your arms by your side, because as soon as you put your arms out, you're giving them leverage. The receiver can pull you, you're putting you off balance, which gives them the leverage. He just doesn't do that. He doesn't doesn't give the opportunity for a receiver to get leverage on him. He's really physical, but maintains that speed with the receiver. So he especially day 1 and day 2, he's absolutely locking everyone down. So he's been really impressive to me.
I think this draft again is quite interesting, and I don't know, is it just a year anomaly or is it a trend? You're getting a lot of small, shifty receivers, but getting a lot of big physical corners. It's interesting because that maybe hasn't been the trend for a wee while. We've seen a lot of kind of outside receiver guys in some of these smaller corners. The corner guys are the top ones. They're big physical guys. Just a total observation, just as you were talking about it. Whether it means anything, who knows? Is it just this year? But something maybe to look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it will be very interesting that the first, I think for receivers, apart from Quentin Johnson, you just keep looking down the list and something will say ideal slot receiver. It's that kind of class. And I think on the basis of cornerbacks who've done really well in the NFL, people are going to be looking for the 6'1", 6'2", looking for the wingspan. And I think, that would be really interesting. The thing I was going to pick up on cornerbacks is obviously one of the things here is you may have been a cornerback where you did okay, but your particular skill set didn't necessarily fit the defensive scheme that the college was running in terms of whether you were in zone or man, or and so your stats might not look that spectacular, but actually, situations like the Senior Bowl give you an opportunity to show off what you can do. And a team might start to look at you and think, okay, well, stats wise, it didn't look like you got many picks or many pass breakups, but actually skill set wise, I think you could work for us. So I think cornerback is one of those positions where, it can depend on the scheme that they've been in for the last 3-4 years, whatever.
How many players have we gone over there? Not one quarterback mentioned.
You've cut me off. I was going to say that you guys have skirted round it. You guys have skirted round it. You've avoided it, and you knew I was going to ask you. Do I have to talk about the quarterbacks? Yeah, we probably do. But
the others aren't really necessary.
Yeah, and I probably know who you're going to speak about. Do you want to crack on then?
There's just been absolutely no quarterback player. Some of these receivers we maybe would be talking about more if they had a ball that was catchable. But that's just the way it's been, especially on the national team, which has got Jaron Hall from BYU, Jake Hayner from Fresno State, and Malik Cunningham from Louisville. They've just been all over the place. Jake Hayner's probably looked the best of the guys, but still hasn't been that impressive to me, and he's a smaller guy. On the American team, Max Duggan, considering he was a Heisman finalist, I can't say I've seen him do anything. Clayton Tune from Houston, again, has been pretty non-existent. You see the big plays. He's not on the end of any of them. The person who is a small school guy from Shepherd, Tyson Bagent, who has been mightily impressive for where he has come from. We're not speaking about him as a top prospect, but just his demeanor and his confidence and what seems to be his intelligence as well. He can really zip the ball. He's got some skills about him. He's one of those guys who's probably 2 years from being 2 years off. So but if you want to take a developmental prospect at some point, I don't think you're going to go wrong with him, because I think people really like him too. They really warm to him.
Okay. So have you ever been to a function where just before they open the buffet, some distant relative catches you and is talking to you, and you can see everybody else is going to the buffet, and then by the time you get there, there's almost nothing left? That's how I feel about this week in terms of the quarterbacks. It's just like, what am I looking at here? There's not a lot. As you say, we might have seen some better receiver play if the quarterbacks had been better, which sounds really harsh, but it's not a great class, is it? As soon as you get past the guys who aren't here, and I imagine when we talk about the top fives, what we're really talking about is who's fifth, because I imagine whatever order we have the other four in, then it's all about who we have as the fifth one. I haven't got any more to add on that point, sorry, but I haven't been that impressed.
just because we have to talk about quarterbacks because people want to talk about quarterbacks, I'm going to fire you as a question. Do you think Will Levis has done himself harm or good by not coming?
He's got a dodgy toe, bless him. So he can't. I think he's done himself some harm. I think he would have been better off going there. Yeah,
I think
really
so.
do.
Absolutely.
How much better would he have looked than all of these guys?
That's just what, and it's just a question I hadn't pre-planned, popped into my head.
Yeah.
If the guys are as bad as we're making them out to be, and it's not slagging off these guys, they can throw a ball 20 times farther than I could ever hope to throw a ball in my life. But particularly as I'm getting old. But these Will Levis could have had that opportunity to go, do you know what? I am miles better than these guys. I'm in a league of my own. Is it because he doesn't want to hurt himself, or is he not confident enough in his own abilities?
So the thing I wonder is, and we've had it before, to just play in the week. Don't say for the game you're injured. Do 2 or 3 days worth of practice. You're not going to get flattened, and you will look miles better than all the other guys. And I think he and the people around him from this point on to draft day need to do the whole play the game, mate. Turn up to things. Show that you're interested in this process. Don't take everything for granted that somebody, I don't know, the Raiders are going to take you at 7 or something like that. And the other thing that I was going to, because you can do this, can't you? I'll just contradict myself now. What these other guys have got to do is look and go, okay, who was one of the quarterbacks in the NFC Championship game? And, look at his background, look at Brock Purdy's background. There is a route here where, albeit a slim chance, but you can get yourself on a roster, and then it's only going to take an injury or two, and you could actually see yourself playing. So fair play to them for coming along and for giving it a go. The quality is clearly not there, but they go up in my estimation, and Will Levis comes down.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of teams that feel that way up and down the board. That doesn't have to be quarterback, could be some of the others, but there would have been a lot of teams that would be interested. I was just trying to look there, I couldn't quite get it in time, but who was the coach for the quarterbacks and what team that they come from? I couldn't find. I don't know whether if any of you guys had the document there or anything, but whether there could be an opportunity missed there if the coach for the quarterbacks this year, the way that they've done it, was from one of those teams. That's a real missed opportunity for him potentially.
I could be lying. I want to say it might have been someone from the Falcons, but was on one of the teams.
Was offensive coordinator, but still.
That's maybe what it was. Yeah, I knew there was something from the Falcons on the offense, but I couldn't remember. I remember seeing him. I couldn't remember what his role was.
Yeah. But I think the way that I'm really quite interested to see how there's going to be, we're a while away from knowing it, but how it falls in terms of information being shared between, we've got all 18 non-playoff teams represented in terms of coaching staff at the Senior Bowl. What do they do in terms of sharing information in meetings? It's not something I thought about when we spoke about it on the preview. But do they keep some stuff back? If you're the running backs coach, who I know is from the Commanders, in the meeting, how much of the information that you've gained do you share, which would be really interesting. But I wanted to. I don't know if have you got any more players we want to speak about, because I wanted to shout out one of the coaches.
No, go on, shout out the coach.
Well, so if you've been, you would have seen him. He's been mic'd up on ESPN the last couple of days, and Grady Brown, who is usually the Steelers defensive backs coach, he is the defensive coach for the national team. And I tell you what, he is a character. I want to go for a beer with him. What an absolute man! What a bloke he is. He's out there throwing tennis balls at everyone. They're not even allowed to look at him. They've got to catch the tennis balls without looking at him, because they was mic'd up and he was saying that as a as defensive backs, so that's what it is that they're expected to catch every ball that comes their way. But how often in practice does the ball actually come their way to be able to practice picking the ball off? So he's out there chucking tennis balls just randomly at defensive backs and the hope that they catch it. Absolutely amazing character. I think the Steelers have got a really good one there, and you can just tell that the players absolutely loved him.
So Grady Brown, if you're listening, the 99 yards draft talk boys want to take you out for a beer. So yeah, come and join us anytime.
Yeah, just don't bring the tennis balls.
Yeah.
Might be fun, depends on how many beers we've had at that point, eh? Is that you guys?
Yeah, I can't think of anything else out there. No, I think we're good. Just looking forward to seeing what happens in the game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting on Saturday. So tune in. The game's on Saturday afternoon. If anyone who's keen to watch how these guys get on.
NFL Network.
Yeah, NFL Network. There is some other place you could probably watch it, but that's probably the easiest one for everyone to find. So yeah, check out the website for all the Senior Bowl stuff that's coming out there. Follow us on the Twitter feed at 99 yards. We're going to be back soon. We're going to be diving into mock drafts, top fives, all that kind of stuff in the coming weeks. So thanks very much for listening.
And we've got your interview with the Zebra guys coming up.
Oh yeah, that will be out as well. The guys from Zebra Sports, look out for that coming over the weekend as well. It was a fun chat with those guys. They seem good fun as well. Yeah, again, thanks for tuning in.